to start at the very beginning for those people who might not have a background with the McKinney-Vento subgrant. So all subgrant funds are intended to be used for students experiencing homelessness. So they need to be able to be directed for those kiddos. So in order to really understand how to direct the funds, we need to understand what the definition of students experiencing homelessness is as per McKinney-Vento. So if you've been on any trainings with me before, I'm sure that you've seen this slide many times, but I did just want to kind of point out a few things. So the homeless definition as per McKinney-Vento means that a student lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. They might be children and youth who are sharing the housing of other people due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or other reasons. They might be living in a hotel, motel, trailer park, or campground due to the lack of an adequate accommodation. They're living in an emergency transitional shelter or abandoned in a hospital. Children who have a primary nighttime residence that is a public place not meant or designed to be ordinarily used for human habitation is considered to be homeless. Children and youth who are living in a car, park, public space, abandoned building, substandard house, or bus or train or similar. And then migratory children qualify for McKinney-Vento if they meet those above definitions. So there's a few of these that I'd like to really point out. I always bring people back to this slide. Fixed, regular, and adequate is we want to make sure that we are understanding for our students. Do they have a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence? Fixed is a permanent, it's not subject to change. Regular is it's predictable, it's the place they go on a schedule, or there's some relative permanence to that regular housing. Adequate also would mean that it's lawfully and reasonably sufficient. We have a whole guide to understanding substandard housing on the OPI website that I could also link for you if you're thinking that a student might not be living in an adequate situation. They might lack basic utilities, they might have an infestation, there might be structural issues with the home. Those might be examples of substandard housing. So I just would like to draw your attention. We have our previous school year 24-25 data out now. This is the GEMS, this is just a screenshot, but we have the GEMS dashboard available on the OPI website for you to dig into this if it's interesting to you. I just wanted to point out a few things. On the right-hand side, we have homeless counts by nighttime residents. So you can see that the turquoise bar there, and then we have some smaller rectangles that are yellow, orange, and blue. That turquoise bar indicates students who are doubled up. So that in that definition for McKinney-Vento, that is sharing the housing of others due to economic hardship or similar reason. The vast majority of students in the country who qualify for McKinney-Vento qualify because they're doubled up. So they're living with another family. And that's the biggest area where we see in Montana that students are living. And we also see it as a very common and easily missed group of children. So it's sometimes hard to identify that. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about the kids that are living in your district. In 2024-25, we identified 5,559 students who qualified for McKinney-Vento at some point in that year. And you can see that the vast majority of those were doubled up. A little history about McKinney-Vento. It was originally the Homeless Assistance Act in 1987, which was a broad, widespread bill to support people experiencing homelessness just as a result of the economy and things that were going on at that time. The portion of the bill that is most similar to the McKinney-Vento Act has been modified and added to educational law over the years. It has most recently been reauthorized in 2016 with Every Student Succeeds, and it was attached to things like No Child Left Behind previously before that. So part of this law establishes that federal funds come from Congress and are delivered to states in order to distribute to our local school districts, our LEAs. So Montana has chosen to release the subgrant funds every 3 years. So that means when you apply this year, you're going to apply for a competitive grant process, but you will get funds this school year and the following 2 school years after that. And we call that continued funding or a continued grant in year 2 and 3. So in our most recent grant cycle, we had funds that were competitively put out in 23-24, and then those districts also got funds in 24-25 and 25-26. In those 3 years, we served about 46 LEAs and between 4,000 and 4,400 students. So during that period, we identified that statewide, we had 5,700 students experiencing homelessness. So the vast majority of districts that had subgrant funds met, the majority of those students who were experiencing homelessness. I will say that we are particularly in certain areas of the country, of the state, we are reporting a little lower just based on we have some indicators around students who are living considered to be living with a low economic status. So students who qualify for Title I, often the federal government will say that often about 5 to 10% of those students may be experiencing homelessness. So even if you take like 5% of your students who are considered low income or in poverty, you can compare that to the number of students you're identifying as homeless and see how kind of close you are. So that kind of gives us just a rule of thumb, a little indication of kind of where we should be district by district. Of course, it's not like a hard and fast rule, but it does kind of help you understand whether or not maybe you're identifying, at a level that seems appropriate or perhaps below that level. So we're just going to talk about some of the acceptable uses of funds, how you might choose to use your subgrant funds if you do choose to apply and you are awarded. They just need to be connected to the purpose of the grant. That means they are really only for students experiencing homelessness. They also need to be reasonable and necessary, just like any federal fund. And they need to be above and beyond for expenses above and beyond those of your general student population. So for instance, if you're required to have a guidance counselor in your school, you're not going to be able to pay your counselor's salary with McKinney Vento funds. So it has to be something above and beyond. You might be able to fund some liaison salary and benefits, but it needs to be an additional position in addition to those things that are required for your general student population. We're going to talk a little bit more about the use of funds tip sheet. This is developed by the National Center for Homeless Education. It will walk people through what is allowable and not allowable. And I'd highly suggest, if you're considering this, that you look at this thoroughly so that you can really see whether or not you'll be able to use these funds and put them to good use. So it'll guide you through some different deciding points, decision points. And then this is the 16 activities. I know it's probably a little crammed for you, but I just wanted to kind of pop off a few of these so that you can get yourself thinking. So the funds might be used to provide tutoring, to enrich educational activities or services for students. They might be used to provide professional development to heighten advocacy and awareness amongst staff. They might be used to help students become referred to medical, dental, or other health services. They might defray costs of transportation. Obviously, that's something I know that probably all of you are dealing with. It is higher and higher every day, and so that is one acceptable use of funds. The provision for developmentally appropriate early childhood education, you might consider coordinating with maybe a local Head Start program or preschool if you do not have one within your district. Um, Before and after school care, summer programming. So really the whole goal is you're removing barriers to access and engagement for your students for school and extracurricular activities. So anything like that. I wanted to point out the final use of funds, number 16. It's the provision for other extraordinary or emergency assistance needed to enable homeless children and youth to attend and participate fully in school. So it's left open-ended for a reason so that you might be able to, um, think about what is it that your student is really needing and what is keeping them from coming to school, and then you're removing that barrier. So I have a lot of questions regularly kind of on this topic about whether or not a fund is usable or not, or allowable or not. And so one of the things that I get asked is something like, well, I have a family who has a car and it's broken down, and can I use funds to fix their car? And then I would guide you to kind of look through that tip sheet and think through, okay, is this a reasonable expense? Like, how much is it versus how much are you getting? So maybe you're only getting $2,000 in your district and it's $1,000 expense. Is that a reasonable expense if it's like half of your grant funds, for instance? Also, is that car essential in getting the kid to school? So perhaps you are reimbursing miles, and that is the way that you have available to you because you don't have other busing, or because the student lives out of the district and you can't get adequate transportation. So you're really relying on the parent to get them to school. In that case, you might consider it being something that is allowable to fix that car because it is removing that barrier. So just kind of keeping those emergency things in mind as potentially optional. The things that are expressly prohibited for this grant are temporary housing. During the pandemic, it was opened up that hotels and motels and temporary housing were an option. It is not currently an option, as it has been expressly prohibited by the Department of Education. It is going through Congress, from what I hear from some of our nonprofit advocacy groups, that they are petitioning Congress to have this added back into grant funds to become allowable, but at the moment it is not allowable. So this is not a source of funds if you're having that need in your district and you're hoping to maybe uh, provide some temporary stopgap measures for your kids to have somewhere to live. Construction is also not an option for this grant. And then supplanting funds, obviously, like I spoke of before, you can't all of a sudden decide that a staff member's salary is going to come out of the grant instead of your general fund. That would be supplanting. Any questions on allowability before we move forward? Maybe. So we made some changes for those of you who are subgrantee recipients already. We have made some changes this year. They are fairly limited, but I just wanted to make sure to point them out. We encourage any subgrant or any school district who's interested in receiving subgrant funds to apply. In previous years, we had limited the amount of students experiencing homelessness. So for instance, you had to have counted 50 students in order to apply, or 30 students in order to apply. We've just gotten away from that. And if you believe that this is something that's necessary for your district, we encourage you to apply, and you can form a consortium with districts in your area if that is something you want to do. You might consider a consortium when you have maybe a need for only a limited amount of funds, or you have a limited number of students experiencing homelessness. That would increase your numbers by grouping up with districts around you. You might need some administrative support, like you might need a bigger district in your area to do the legwork with e-grants and have that clerk support if maybe you're a small district and you don't have a lot of that. You might consider creating a joint project with people in districts in your area. I could really see certain areas of the state doing really well with creating a grant for transportation. In a situation where there's multiple, maybe rural districts that are sharing students between them, it maybe would be more effective for them to work together to create some kind of transportation contract and use grant funds to do that for those students experiencing homelessness. So please keep that in mind. Um, and you were allowing that only there's 50% carryover from year to year. So remember, I said that these are 3-year cycles. So once you get the competitive grant, you get allocations in year 2 and 3 also. And but between those years, we're only allowing a 50% carryover. We had problems with in the past, and part of it is because we had a lot of other COVID money on the table. But we had issues with districts carrying all of that and just not spending it. And we just really want to make sure that it's going to meet the needs of your students. So we're only allowing a 50% carryover from year to year for those in between years. Um, we're also maximizing funding for homeless liaison salary and benefits by 70%. So 70% of your grant funds can go towards that liaison salary and benefits. That means 30% needs to go to something else. The reason why we've done that is very few people, I don't even know if I know of one homeless liaison that doesn't have some other role. So we're really wanting to make sure these are going for students experiencing homelessness, and perhaps then for the foster care point of contact or for some other role in the district, you're using maybe your Title I-A set aside or maybe another pot of title funding, for instance. Any questions on those changes? So the way that we're going to try to roll out these funds this year, just to maximize the benefit, especially for our smaller districts. We've seen issues in the past where some of our smaller districts just don't really get enough money to be substantial for anything. So what I'm going to try to attempt to do is to tier the funding so that you have your number of students experiencing homelessness, and you will get funds that are within a tier. I'll show you an example in a second. But that are going to take a 3-year average of those of your homeless numbers, and use that in order to determine your allocation. So it's not just like this last year, it's going to be an average of the last 3 years. I think that will be a little bit more like on par with, because we've had a couple of ups and downs, and so just kind of giving an average I think will give a good number. And we're going to be using a rubric for this competitive year, and things we're going to be looking at, and I'm going to go over this further in a minute, but just your need. What is your students' need? Your ability to leverage funds. So you're going to use McKinney Vento funds. We also ask that you match the amount of allocation with about 35% of that for your set aside. So you'll be bringing in Title I-A set aside funds, and maybe you'll have some outside contributions. Some of our districts have nonprofit organizations that are connected to the district in which they use those to fundraise for various reasons. And then tied to definitely like, okay, we identify that our students are really in need of transportation, and then you're writing it so the grants are going to transportation. I sometimes have had in the past people identify needs of their students and then the budget is totally on something different. So I want to make sure that those things are aligned. And just that you have the ability and the staff bandwidth to carry out the proposal. So really, sometimes I totally acknowledge that we are all probably among everybody in this group are wearing multiple hats, and this is really challenging. So it might not need to just fall on the shoulders of the liaison. It needs to be a little bit of a group effort, maybe an administrator, a liaison, your clerk, maybe the counselor. There's other people involved, and really thinking of it as a component of your multi-tiered systems of support. So this is a sample. This I do not have solid numbers at this time, but this is an example of what I mean when I say a tiered model. So I think that this should be able to be fairly close to being accurate, but I won't know until I know how many people apply for the grant, and then we won't get our final allocation until July 1st. So we won't know the numbers. And without kind of those variables, I can't do this super accurately, but I kind of looked at historical trends, and this is kind of where our funding would kind of land. So really, it's not that much money. Keep that in mind. So, I'm happy to talk to you about some strategies around using grant funds and maybe some other kinds of funding and fundraising in order to make your plans happen. I'm happy to talk to you about those kind of things if you're thinking about that. So specifically, our areas where we're going to be looking for when you're filling out your application is your need. Like I said before, it can be your school district need. It also could be a overall community need. Vento subgrant funds are unique in that these activities can be carried out outside of school. The example in the legislation is that they're carried out like at a shelter. So if you had multiple kids at a shelter, you could be providing tutoring for them at that location. That you just are very clear about the population that's being served, and that you're really working towards supporting the needs of those kids experiencing homelessness. It might be, a referral system within your school district or your community. It might be dropout recovery, maybe to support your graduation rate. Your program activities, I really would love for you all to just think about this as a component of your multi-tiered system of support. This is like maybe a tier 3 intervention, and how does it fit into how you intervene with some of your other at-risk youth? It might be a way to create the system for those at-risk youth. And knowing that, these funds are really for only students experiencing homelessness, but you could incorporate and blend other funds in that could be used for all students who are at risk. So really thinking about this at the most macro kind of level. How are you coordinating that support for your at-risk learners? And again, the statute really connects, McKinney-Vento statute really connects the community to your programming, and we're really looking that you have that collaboration and coordination between resources in your community, and that you're engaging back and forth. We also identify that career and technical education opportunities are sometimes game changers for students who are experiencing homelessness and can vastly improve graduation rates and engagement. So we would love to encourage you to coordinate that with CTE programs. These would be great funds to go hand in hand with things like Perkins grant funds. You're also, like I said before, that this is part of your Title I program, part of your Title I plan. These are things that are connected to your other low income supports and services. Um, your program evaluation, we want you to be able to be data driven, that you're really thinking about what's going on for your school and how you could improve it. What SMART goals do you have? We will ask you for specific goal setting, and just that these are strategic and relevant funds, so that you're using these, but you're also maybe coordinating with other funding streams as well. Any questions on any of the things I have previously covered? Okay, So also just thinking for your district, are you able to kind of meet the requirements that we set out for the to be a sub-grantee? And so every year we will ask you to fill out an application. The application year one for the competitive process is quite a lot more involved, but in the following 2 years, you do fill out an application in order to receive your allocation. And part of that is identifying any new goals you might have and following up on the goals that you set the year before so that we kind of have an understanding about how well it's gone for you, if you've been able to meet the goals, or maybe there's a whole different need that's come up since you set the goals the first time. So keep that in mind that that is a requirement. You are required 7 hours of professional development for the liaison. And it is required that all staff members in your school district receive some sort of staff training yearly. That is in statute for all districts, whether or not you do get sub-grant funds or not. So just keep that in mind. But that would be probably easily done for districts that are really focused on this. I will be setting out sub-grant meetings. I would hope that you could monthly engage with those just so that you have an opportunity to hear about what other people in the state are doing, and we can talk around any issues we might be having or problem solve together as a group. So you would kind of be in a cohort and meeting. And I realize that not everybody's able to meet every single time, but just some regular engagement is definitely necessary. We want to see that you are really tying all of this to your needs of your students. I'm just entered into the chat. We have a Title 1A needs assessment. You don't have to use this needs assessment, but we do require you to do a needs assessment and submit it as part of your initial grant. And then we just, just like any other federal program, we expect that you have solid fiscal practices like quarterly drawdowns, on-time expenditure reports, that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll be getting this grant out to you within the next week. I will be sending it out. And then your application deadline will be May 1st. And then in June, OPI will let you know whether or not you've received grant funds. Staff members don't need to have a specific amount. It could be 15 minutes. It just needs to be yearly. The liaison needs 3 hours unless you get sub-grant funds, and then the liaison needs 7. And it would be for all staff classified and certified. Okay, any final questions of anything that I've gone over? I know I've kind of just thrown it all at you. Okay, so I'm going to use a few more minutes just to show you what this looks like. So it's green. This is e-grants if you are not one of those folks who gets to play around in e-grants. It is green because it is our test site. We're working through getting through all the bugs that we can as far as the grant goes, the new grant. So you would change your fiscal year to 2027. And it may have timed out because I logged in. Let's see, logged in before the meeting. All right, we'll change it to 2027. It will look like this: ESCA Title IX, Homeless Education Competitive Application. McKinney Vento Act is Title IX of ESSA. Once you will have to, it'll probably be down to the bottom when you first go in there, and you'll click Create. Since I've opened it before, I'm going to click Open. And so this is, I want you all to kind of see what, what this entails, and also any questions that might come up. So, just like all of our other grants, we have a contact information tab. The things I want to point out here that are a little bit different is that you obviously will have to put in a homeless liaison contact. If you do decide to apply as a consortium, you'll need to click this box and add your other member districts here. So Libby, like you guys have applied before, and so Smith Valley would come down here and Cayuse Prairie, I think, right? Yeah. So, so if you are, working together to fill that out, you'll have one point of contact. So one district that's going to kind of take on the filling out of applications and doling out of allocations. And then the other district's contact information will go down on this contact page down here. If for some reason you did want to like do tutoring at a shelter, that would be this box, this collaborating organization, and you can decide, what other like community organization, for instance. Most of you probably won't do that, but that's where it lives. It's just in that little checkbox. You won't get an allocation right away. Because we will assign those after we go through the rating process. I don't know why it's wanting me to do that, but when you click on the needs assessment, usually there's just a link and there's an upload box. It's similar to the ESCA consolidated application where you upload your professional development. You will upload your needs assessment there. Let's see. See, it just looks like that. It will need to be a PDF, simple format, not a lot of extra weird characters. It tends to work okay. Project need, so you're gonna just kind of outline 3 to 5 basic needs for the next 3 years. So you're planning out. Population served, my hope is that we will get this uploaded for you, that you'll have all of the schools in your district listed, their grade spans, their homeless counts, your enrollment totals, and your low income population numbers here. And then the program activities are really going to ask you to think about your tier 1, 2, and 3. What is the needs of your students and what activities would you foresee yourself carrying out? This is really collaborating with your Title I program, your special education program, transportation, school nutrition. It doesn't need to be extensive, but it does need to be addressed. If you've gone through your monitoring process recently, you probably have this already done. This aligns directly with statute. And if you do choose or not choose to get the McKinney Vento grant, you should just be aware that these are requirements in statute for any district, not just subgrantees. Just some check boxes and just kind of guiding you to help you think through the coordination between McKinney Vento and Title I. Your program evaluation. This is going to talk about your professional development, your program goals. Make sure you're filling them out as SMART goals, just so we're just very clear and precise goal setting. And then budget pages, just like we asked in the fall with your ESCA consolidated application, we just want a lot of specifics if you can in your budget. So say you're going to do a contract for a tutor with an outside organization, that contract should be listed, the terms of the contract, like it would be running from September to May of 2026, 27, and that it'll be for one employee for 10 hours a week, like you're specifying the terms and hours and then the expenditure that is connected to the contract. All of these should also be written that the contract to provide tutoring for students experiencing homelessness I know it seems like a really kind of simple and obvious thing, but in order to verify if this is an allowable expense, we need to know that it's tied to supporting those students. So you need to include it in your description. And hopefully, our hope is that the more specific you can be here, the less need for any changes or amendments when it comes time to request your cash. Say, for instance, you're going to buy some supplies. Say you were going to buy 25 units of deodorant and 15 units of toothpaste, and you just want to kind of give some estimates about how much that'll be and how many of those items that you plan to purchase. So it's kind of the other really great one that I love seeing districts do is like cover fees for students around, especially around things like getting birth certificates and vital documents, getting their college application fees covered, school fees that are associated with your sports and other activities that you might be doing at the high school level, fees that might be in like supplies and materials to take like a welding class or an art class, those kinds of things. Maybe for the elementary, like a musical instrument band rental fee, that would be great. Just those high level engagement pieces that can get covered by the grant. And a lot of these tabs are like just assurances. So this is like, this is what you're signing up for. This is the law and kind of the rules of getting these funds. So those are just the high points. Does anyone have any further questions I can answer? So I will send all of you this material. I will also send you a survey just so that you can let me know that you do have an intent to apply. That'll just give me an indication of like about how many districts are thinking of applying. It doesn't, make it so that you must apply, but if you could just let me know that you were thinking about it, that you're likely to apply, that would be great. And so applications, I will be sending out links as soon as I get them. Hopefully it's this week, if not next week. The application will go out and we can stick to May 1st as the deadline to get them back to us. And then we will get back to you in June to let you know about whether or not you've received the funds. Okay. All right, if you think of something after the fact, please feel free to reach out. I'm also happy to just meet with you individually to see if this is something that really is really a good fit for your district or not. I'm happy to help you talk that through and think that through. Otherwise, have an awesome Monday. Be safe out there for those of you who got some snow. Thanks so much.
Thank you.